You're probably already aware of the importance of recycling waste items at home. By recycling, we find ways to reuse materials and reduce the amount of trash sent to local landfills. Howdy everyone, and welcome to the Earth Day 4-H Youth Summit, where we're discussing restoring our Earth. I'm John Prito with the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, and I'm here to teach you how to make compost by recycling trash from your kitchen and yard. So let's dig in. Have you ever been out at a park somewhere and seen an apple core or banana peel lying on the ground? Or maybe you've been hiking before and noticed a fallen tree that has been there for a while. As these organic materials begin to break down, they turn brown and mushy, and sometimes get a little slimy, or in the case of the log, start to crumble or feel squishy when we stand on them. This process, known as decomposition, is how compost is created. Compost is a light and fluffy mixture of decayed organic matter, and composting is when we take part in controlling the decomposition of these materials and use finished products in our gardens to promote soil and plant health. Basically, we are turning waste like these raked leaves here, this fresh cut grass, the twigs and the mulches in the bottom left hand side, and these vegetable scraps on the bottom right hand side, and we are turning them into black gold. The adventure of creating black gold is a team effort. Of course, we have to get the pile started, but much of the hard work is handled by our team of microorganisms, insects, worms, and spiders that we will refer to as the decomposers. We are making the perfect habitat for these creepy crawlies, and they turn that home over time into compost by eating, pooping, and moving the material around. At this point, I hope you're looking all over your house for waste items to compost, but you may be wondering how to get started. It's very simple. Find a place to dedicate to composting that's near a water source, gather your materials, start layering, and hope the critters come to play. The best part about composting is it can be scalable. What I mean is, if you live in an apartment and are limited to a small patio, you can compost in something as small as a 2-liter soda bottle. At the other extreme, our local solid waste department here in Pinellas County composts over 270,000 tons of yard trash from all over the county and creates composted mulch in windrows, like the ones you see on the left-hand side of this image. This material could decompose longer into proper compost, but is typically used as mulch and is available to everyone in the county for free. Many home composting operations use a small to mid-size bin system like we see in the picture here. On the far left-hand side, we have a cylinder made out of chicken wire and a few wooden posts to keep it up. In the middle are a few examples of something that you could purchase with screw-on lids that is already set up for composting, or the one with paint on it is most likely just a rubbish bin that has been converted into a composting bin. On the far right hand side, we see an example of these blue painted pallets used for a 3-bin system, much like the image on the right hand side here. Typically, the first bin would be used as the adding pile, so as you are adding materials to it, you would slowly build up that front wall. In the middle would usually be a curing area, something that has been completely added to and has no more room and is just left alone to finish off. And then usually on the far end would be finished product that can be used out in the garden as you see fit. On the left hand side, we just have another example of a cylinder open top compost bin, but one that you could purchase and is held together by a couple of wing nuts. Next, we have to start gathering materials to create habitat for the decomposers. And what do they need? Well, much like ourselves, the decomposers require shelter, food, water, and air. This is where we start dividing what goes in the compost by color. We want to add brown materials and green materials and water in layers until we are done building the pile. The browns are things like straw, sawdust, leaves, twigs, and mulch, and these items are typically very high in carbon. The greens are things like kitchen scraps, fresh grass clippings, and yard trimmings, coffee grounds, and even human or pet hair. These items are high in nitrogen. The browns can be thought of as the shelter for the decomposers, and the greens can be thought of as food. Remember, your home is much larger than your refrigerator, so add 2 to 3 times more browns to your compost pile every time you add greens, and always remember to add water between layers. As our pile is decomposing, we want to monitor the compost for moisture, odor, and temperature. Remember, you want your pile moist like a cake, not wet like a soup. If your compost pile is too dry, it's time to add water. If your compost pile is too wet, add a small amount of brown material and turn the pile. Is it still too wet? Add some more browns to the pile and stir again until it has returned to being moist. Compost piles should not stink of rot, but should smell earthy. If you notice a foul odor coming from your compost pile, it is likely due to too much water or too much nitrogen. So add browns and turn the pile until the smell is gone. If you want compost sooner rather than later, your compost pile should stay between 100 and 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Any hotter than 150 degrees Fahrenheit and many of the microorganisms will not be able to thrive. Any cooler than 100 degrees Fahrenheit and the pile will take longer to decompose. The simple solution to many compost pile problems is to turn the pile, and if it's still too wet or stinks, add browns and turn it again. One of the most common questions about composting we hear is how long does it take to get compost? And the answer is, well, it depends. If you are very active with your pile and turn it daily, you may find yourself with compost in just about a month's time, maybe even less. If you're going for a more passive composting system and turning purely for maintenance, then it may take 3 to 6 months to make compost. The best indicator that your compost is ready to be used is that it no longer looks like the material you started with. Finally, it's time to use the completed product. You might want to start by screening your compost using something similar to the left-hand image. The larger materials left behind from screening can be thrown back into a future compost pile and almost used to jumpstart that system. The fine materials that were screened out can be used directly in the garden or as part of a potting mix. The fines can also be brewed into a tea that can be used to water the plants with a boost of nutrients from the compost. If you think about it, compost is a way to recycle plants into new plants. So do your part to recycle yard wastes and kitchen scraps into a rich soil amendment that your plants will love. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Mr. H, for inviting me to be part of this year's Earth Day Summit. And remember, everyone, reduce, reuse, and recycle.